What's going on, everybody? We are live. Shout out to everybody joining us. It is Monday, December 8th, 2025. It's crazy to think just in a couple of weeks, we will go from 2025 to 2026. But of course, this has become a very, very, very big day in professional wrestling and in television news because today the news dropped that Paramount has issued a hostile bid. So that is a really big deal. We're going to talk about it. But as always with these live streams, man, we're going to talk about professional wrestling. We're going to talk about everything you guys want to know, all the questions that you guys have, everything that you guys are interested in, we're going to talk about. So, of course, the way to do that is if you guys are watching live on TikTok, I'm looking at you in the chat. Make sure you guys ask your questions, whatever it may be. In fact, even on TikTok, I am going to allow somebody to debate me or to join in on the conversation. So if you guys are watching on TikTok, I will open it up to a co-host. If somebody would like to join, we could talk about professional wrestling. If you guys are watching on the Red app, as you can imagine, you guys see the title AEW on Paramount. We're going to talk NXT Deadline, your questions, your comments. I'm going to be looking at chats, man. I'm going to be looking at both chats. Going to be looking at the super chats, the questions, and everything that's coming in. Shout out to 2Up Prince for sending a rose. Thank you, I appreciate that. A lot of great things happening in professional wrestling. We are kind of in a weird spot with professional wrestling because I feel like professional wrestling right now has its moments of good stuff, and then you have its moments of bad stuff. Obviously, this past weekend we had a lot of professional wrestling. We had Ring of Honor Final Battle. We had SmackDown. We had TNA Final Resolution. We had NXT Deadline. These were all very, very big deals to their respective companies. But also in addition to that, today we got the news that Paramount has offered a hostile bid upwards to like $108 billion. Might be like the biggest acquisition ever if it goes through. But yeah, the Paramount company really, 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 really wants the entire thing of Warner Bros. Discovery. They want the movies, the theaters, the IPs. They want everything and anything you can imagine. They want CNN, they want TNT, they want TBS. They want all of these things, which obviously could play into a major factor for AEW moving forward. Obviously, with AEW moving forward, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of things that people just don't really know what the hell is going on. And for a business perspective, there is a fiduciary responsibility that Warner Bros. Discovery has to ensure that its stockholders and shareholders and everybody are being met. The expectations for them are being met. And this is the thing. Netflix, for example, does not want TNT or TBS. Paramount does. So King Pizza Big says the TV channels are not part of it, though. For the Netflix deal, they are not part of it. However, for Paramount, it is. So for $108 billion, they are creating this massive, massive, massive offer. And essentially what they want is they want everything. They want everything from Warner Bros. Discovery. And that means AEW would actually, in turn, they would have a scenario in which they would be on Paramount if this deal were to go through. And the big concern here, the big question here, the big thing that everybody seems to be forgetting is that all of these major companies have ties to WWE or TKO in some aspect. And one thing that is not being talked about is necessarily the fact that maybe AEW has nothing to worry about, or maybe AEW has everything to worry about. The Ellison family at this point, I seen a good recap, right? They now own so many different businesses in TikTok, and if they were to own Paramount, that means they own CNN. These are all things that need to be, considered. And I think for AEW, you have to wonder if there's such a small little macro in all of this. You have to wonder if they are, in any sense, truly impacted by this. I think for sure with Netflix, if Paramount does not get this and this goes to Netflix, 1,000,000% AEW is impacted. But I actually don't think that's going to be the case necessarily when it comes to when it comes to AEW on Paramount. I think AEW on Paramount could be a little bit more of a safe spot because I don't know if the Ellison family really cares to make sure TKO is happy, but I'm sure they're going to be trying to make the White House happy, right? And who knows, right? That's obviously a very big question mark, and everything that we're kind of looking at here, it is a relatively big deal. Now, this is such a big hostile bid. So essentially the way that it worked was Paramount announced today that they launched a hostile takeover bid for WBD. Paramount have actually offered an all-cash offer worth $30 per share for all of WBD. So this includes TNT, TBS, Home Garden TV, Discovery Channel, True TV. This also includes CNN. This includes HBO Max. This includes their studios. This includes absolutely everything, right? For $30 per share. I mean, we are looking at over $100 billion deal. Now, the thing about this deal in particular that is super interesting is the fact that Netflix doesn't want the TV portion, and their deal is like $81 billion or something like that. So now we're in a situation where we're going to see how they do this. But again, Paramount has a bigger offer. We're looking at a bigger cash offer. It kind of becomes a little tricky as you start to see things unfold. And obviously for AEW, you really, 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 really don't know what's going on here. There's somebody in the chat. Boris says people are acting like TK can't get a meeting with the Ellisons if Paramount gets WBD. The question isn't necessarily whether he could get meetings. That's not the issue here. So this is analysis from a TV perspective and the business perspective. My analysis here isn't necessarily the analysis of a wrestling fan. The Ellison family, if they were to secure WBD, there's contracts in place with exclusivity. Now, the UFC was a very, very, very big TV acquisition deal. So TKO owns the UFC. TKO is the one coming to the table with negotiations with what they deem that, like, the things that they want. Tony Khan could get a conversation with anybody. He's a billionaire, for crying out loud. But the thing is, if you're Paramount, if you're the Ellison family, do you want to necessarily pay $100 million a year for AEW TV rights and then ultimately piss off TKO? Which one is going to be a bigger driving force for your television properties? UFC or AEW? If you're a wrestling fan and you're responding to this by saying it's AEW, you're wrong. The UFC will far more be valuable. So therefore, you might not try to piss off TKO because you're the one who just invested billions to bring in TKO. So my philosophy has kind of changed over a period of time. It's with AEW landing the TV deal with Paramount and going to the negotiation table. That's how you have to look at it. Now, Michael Loretta says, why would TKO worry about AEW? Well, the reality is TKO, it's not necessarily to worry about AEW, but I think one thing that people often forget is that you cannot kill AEW. You cannot kill AEW, okay? The reality is Tony Khan's a billionaire. This is his passion project. Whether Tony Khan makes the greatest wrestling company or the worst wrestling company, that shit don't matter. Tony Khan is a passionate wrestling fan. Like, he genuinely loves it. He's going to keep it going for as long as he wants, right? So the reality is TKO knows that Tony Khan will not let AEW die. But what TKO could do is prevent another billionaire from saying, let me get involved in the wrestling business. Let me try to do what AEW is doing. If you're a billionaire thinking I'm going to get into the wrestling business and you see WWE bullying AEW around, then you already know that it's going to be even a bigger challenge. So I don't think TKO gives a shit about AEW. I think they give a shit about preventing more AEWs from popping up. And I think that's a very, very fair analysis. So TKO, yes, they're going to want AEW to progressively get smaller and smaller. They're going to progressively want AEW to do these things. They don't want to get touched by AEW. And then you have to be realistic and say, okay, well, will AEW genuinely have an impact on WWE? No, the answer is no. And that's okay. It doesn't need to be. We don't need to be in a situation where they are. Wrestling fans who feel this way tend to not really understand the purpose of what AEW should be. AEW should be an alternative option that pays very well and treats the industry better. AEW will self-destruct before WWE kills AEW. WWE cannot kill AEW. AEW would have to self-destruct because as a business, Tony Khan would have to be like, I'm done. I don't foresee that ever happening. Say what you will about the product itself. That's up to you. That's fine. But AEW has a better chance of self-destructing versus WWE killing AEW. On the flip side of that, AEW will never kill WWE. WWE will have to self-destruct. In the last 6 years, I don't know how many times I've explained this live on content, but it is true. So that is something to obviously consider. Shout out to Thomas for the follow. I appreciate it. Inkster Ross says, but also if you're Netflix, why not get AEW? Because you can get paid by both companies. Well, the reality is you have to pay for these companies, not the other way around. So Netflix, by the way, they have a responsibility to WWE by being loyal to WWE, and WWE obviously comes up with an exclusive contract. That's kind of where they're at with it. So what you guys are noticing over a period of time is that WWE and AEW, they have to find different relationships and different partners. And that's the big thing. You have to please your partners. Now, for me personally, the way I kind of look at it is I think there's a far more likely chance of AEW ever being on Paramount than Netflix in general. Because for example, let's just say Paramount doesn't do this deal. Let's say like Netflix actually ends up getting Warner Bros. Discovery and Paramount doesn't get it. I think there's always that possibility eventually when Tony Khan has to go back to the drawing table, maybe in 2027 or whatever it may be. I think that would be a time in which Tony Khan and AEW have to renegotiate. I think your two legitimate options would be Apple and Amazon. And I think if they could squeeze in that conversation with Paramount and Paramount, were to do that business with AEW, then that would be a possibility. But I don't think that's the first option for Tony Khan at all. I don't think that's the first option. If I were Tony Khan, my solution is very much going to Amazon Prime. Like completely. Like I would go completely live on Amazon Prime. And that's kind of how I would look at it. Shout out to Jonathan Evans for joining. Shout out to Caden for the share. I appreciate it. Southampton Till I Die says, one thing what might be bad for us is what am I going to do in the UK? So I can't help you guys with the UK TV deal stuff, unfortunately. I don't know too much. If there's anybody here on the chat between TikTok and YouTube, I don't know if you guys have like if you guys know a little bit more about I don't know if you guys know about the UK TV deal more, but I unfortunately do not know. So, unfortunately, I really just don't know much about the UK TV deal. And I'm not going to be well versed in the UK TV deal because I don't live in the UK, that kind of thing. From what I know, I feel like from what I've seen online, a lot of people tend to use Triller TV in the UK. But that's obviously a big thing. I don't know. Roger says, how do you know Netflix has an exclusive contract with AEW? They don't, but they do have an exclusive contract with WWE. That's how WWE operates with those deals. Nicholas, WWE, he just dropped a heart me. Shout out to you. I appreciate that. AMUM3TH dropped a $2 super chat. He says, hey, for now, WWE doesn't see AEW as real competition. Yeah, I don't think they see AEW as real competition. I don't think WWE needs to see AEW as real competition, quite frankly. I think WWE's competition is actually themselves. I think when you look at WWE's product this year, it's a solid watch. I just think they're missing excitement. I think WWE has very much not been the most exciting product. I don't think any wrestling company has been that exciting this year. I think this year, every company has kind of gone down the shitter in terms of excitement. I mean, we could sit here and talk about the validity of their booking. I think you could look at those things. But I think if you're looking at WWE and AEW comparison, I think NXT is the only show that is consistent. NXT is the only one that's really been on fire. I don't think anything else has really been on NXT's level. I think you could make an argument that the NXT TNA partnership has probably been the best part about professional wrestling this year. I don't think AEW has offered anything truly exciting, but I also don't think WWE has either. I really don't. I don't think WWE has been that exciting of a product this year. And that's okay. That's okay. I think, personally speaking, what we have gotten this year between all the companies is solid TV. It's just solid TV. I don't think it's much more than that. I don't think so. I don't think WWE or AEW have really stepped up across Dynamite, Raw, SmackDown, like those shows. I don't think they've I don't think they've stepped up. Quite frankly, I will say this too. Like if I'm being completely honest, going back to the super chat, for now, WWE doesn't see AEW as real competition. Maybe WWE should. Maybe that would spark something exciting for WWE. Because as I see it, maybe they should see AEW as real competition. It's kind of hard because AEW hasn't really positioned themselves that way, but maybe you should feel like you're under attack because truth be told, you got to come out swinging for WrestleMania 42. You got to do something big for WrestleMania 42. You cannot sit here and get away with doing absolutely nothing. Shout out to AMUM3TH for the $2 super chat. We can definitely hit our super chat goal today, guys. If you want to show some love, drop a donation. TikTok, I don't know how you could drop donations other than gifts. Maybe there's another way to do it. I have no idea. But I do have a donation link I could put in the chat. I don't know. Does TikTok allow that, though? That's a real question. But if you guys want to donate, I'll be live every day talking about wrestling, taking your questions, reading your questions, answering your questions. I'm always going to be here. Also, just going to throw this out there for TikTok followers. I'm going to start going live before Raws, before SmackDowns, and previewing the show before AEW. We'll do like short streams on TikTok for that as well. So that'll be really cool. But shout out to AMUM3TH for the $2 super chat. I appreciate it. Roger says Mox versus Takeshita slapped. The fans were on their feet before they locked up. Yeah, man. I mean, it's easy. It's easy to get people excited about a wrestling match. It's easy. The problem is it's not drawing AEW anything. We can't sit here and act. The real problem with AEW is the matches are not enough. Honestly. The real problem with AEW that they struggle with is the fact that they've already signed the biggest names possible. They hasn't really changed anything for AEW's business. We haven't seen AEW's business improve overall with ticket sales or with TV ratings. So they've signed everybody and they do these big time matches, and that's awesome. And I love it. And I'm excited for AEW that they're able to do things like this. Moxley versus Takeshita. Yeah, people are going to be excited about it. The problem with AEW, though, is when you've already exerted all these options, you're basically forced with one thing left, and that is to do good creative. And as I've said on this show today, WWE and AEW this year have not been that strong in terms of big-time stories. So even for WWE, I mean, the issue that they've had all year is like, you could tell solid storylines, and the stories could make sense, and they could be kind of fun or whatever, but what is truly grabbing people's attention? Right now, WWE hasn't figured it out this year. For AEW, they haven't figured it out this year. Now, what's strange is for WWE, they continue to do very good with ticket sales. They continue to do really good with merchandise sales. People are still showing up. People are still actively engaged. For AEW, that hasn't necessarily happened. So as we talk about the potential future for AEW on a TV basis, for a TV deal, my first instinct that I have is that AEW is not as valuable as they were when they got their TV deal. And this is not me hating on AEW. I'm just thinking like a business person. We now look at their ratings and they're doing around 400 to 500, 600,000 viewers. This was a company that I seriously thought at one point was going to demolish WWE Raw in ratings. This is a company that demolished NXT on a weekly basis. In 2025, they're not beating NXT in ratings. So when it comes to AEW getting their next TV deal, what is the value? Now that's for years to come. But my point that I'm making is that AEW has already trickled down lower and lower and lower. So we have to acknowledge that. These matches that they have, while they're exciting matchups, that's clearly not enough. It's not enough. Wrestling viewership as a whole has gone down. So as a whole, if it's gone down and you continue to go down and you're far away from WWE, what is it going to take for you to surpass WWE? That is the legitimate question. That's where I think AEW struggles. They need something massive to really catapult them. It can't be a signing, right? It can't be a signing because we've already seen Edge, Mercedes. We've seen all these top names go to the company. It hasn't taken them. And now you have to wonder, what does that mean for TNA? TNA just got the TV deal with AMC. TNA creative lately hasn't even been that great. So what if TNA goes to AMC and this WWE partnership helps them significantly? There shouldn't be a circumstance where TNA has 100 or 200,000 less viewers than AEW. But if AEW is getting like 500K and TNA does like 200K, 300K, you could close the gap on AEW a little bit. So my question is, what is AEW going to do to improve? The same question applies to every company. WWE needs to figure that out. AEW needs to figure that out. TNA needs to figure that out. But it only gets worse for AEW because of this TV deal situation with Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount. That's the craziest part. Like, if you look at AEW from anything other than that, like, you got to just realize at this point, AEW is significantly impacted by whatever happens there. It's significantly impacted by it. Because if Netflix and Paramount are not options for a TV deal because of their relationships with WWE and TKO, AEW in 3 years will have to find another TV partner. So let me be perfectly clear here, because this part is the most important aspect to it all. If AEW's ratings keep dropping, and in 3 years they go get a new TV deal, but there's less options at the table because they all have ties to WWE business, they're going to be put in a spot of desperation in which Amazon or Apple could be like, hey man, like, you really don't have that many choices, so we're not going to offer you $200 million a year. We're not going to offer you $1 billion a year. When there's more people bidding and more options, you kind of have to increase the price in your bid because you're trying to beat out your competition. But if WWE has stripped away all the competition from AEW in terms of TV negotiation opportunities, and then, by the way, AEW is not significantly killing it with TV viewership right now, am I the only person that sees this as a problem? That's where I get concerned. Now, let me be perfectly clear. Let me just be perfectly clear. This is true. I do not believe in my heart AEW will die. I don't think AEW could die. I just don't think they are going to be as big as they were. This is the TNA problem all over again. TNA, Spike TV, killed it. Great ratings. They were doing great things in that company from a TV perspective. And then eventually it dropped. It got lower and lower. Got worse and worse. Then the next thing you know, they're filming on Twitch TV with an iPhone camera. Now, TNA is obviously on the up and up again, but they are not in the Spike TV days. So my point that I'm making to that is I don't know if AEW will ever get to that point. I think if you look at history with TNA, they've been able to survive. I don't think AEW will ever get as bad as TNA did. Like I said, I don't think we'll see AEW on Twitch. But I think AEW has already reached its ceiling. I don't think they'll ever get back to that. But how does Tony Khan fix that? Because there's always a chance. Thankfully, he's a business owner. He's a billionaire. There's always that chance where I think he could fix that. So the question is, how does Tony Khan fix that? It's not the matches. It's not Moxley versus Takeshita. It's not the Continental Classic. And it's not the signings. There is something that has to be dramatically done in professional wrestling for it to pick up steam. WWE included, TNA included, MLW, all of these companies included. If they want to pick up steam, if they want to pick up excitement, they have to do something. And I don't even know if the storytelling itself will be the solution. I think pro wrestling is always going to be this thing where it's always going to be its own niche. No matter how many celebrities professional wrestling brings in, no matter how cool they try to present it as, I think people are going to be either a wrestling fan or not. And I think that's kind of the issue, in all honesty. And that's where maybe I don't have enough confidence in Tony Khan and AEW to figure it out, but I don't have the confidence in WWE either. But WWE clearly has the name reputability and recognition and all that stuff where maybe they could be a little bit different than AEW because people know what WWE is. People don't necessarily know what AEW is. So that's just food for thought. This is not a bash and trash AEW thing. This is just the reality of they've hit their ceiling and these matches aren't going to do it. And no matter how many times people act like it will, it won't. And you're lying to yourself by claiming that it will. And that's kind of all there is to that. There was a super chat from Tolino Channel. He dropped 200 Indian rupees. He says, the NXT deadline had some talking points. The Evolve project is paying off. Iguana can have an underdog story in AAA to become champ. Finally, Femi and Tony could tell a story as NXT originals. Yeah, I think that's a very good super chat. I think NXT deadline was a very good sign of... I thought NXT was a very good sign of what... I thought deadline was a very good sign of what NXT is. When you look at everybody evolve, I mean, Kendall Gray, for example, being the Evolve Women's Champion, now she's at the point where, dude, I don't know, clearly a top star, clearly a future main eventer. If you actually look at NXT, it's the women who are the stars of the show. If you look at Evolve, it's the women who are the stars of the show. It's not the men. They actually, NXT has a problem with men. They have a problem with men and developing men on a different level, to be honest. So NXT will continue to have that issue until they figure it out. But they just don't have... When you look at NXT and when you look at Deadline and you look at all these matches, the matches were good, but it's because it's strong storytelling. Everything that you see there has a lot to do with the storytelling. So when everything there is because of storytelling, it takes it to new levels. But even look at NXT, for example, and you see that Deadline was a great show. It's not going to resort to a certain amount of growth for NXT Tuesday. People will tune in Tuesday, but it's not going to resort into something big for NXT. NXT will always have a ceiling as well. The beauty about NXT is their involvement with AAA too. If you look at Ethan Page, it's funny. Mr. Iguana is becoming a very, very popular, famous name on U.S. American television, there does become a point in time for Mr. Iguana, for AAA, like for them to make some serious money together because of the involvement that he has on American television. So that is just something to keep in mind, obviously. And then regarding Obafemi and Tony D'Angelo, I loved it. I don't know what Tony's new gimmick is. Does anybody know Tony D'Angelo's new gimmick? Chat, I'm asking you guys. TikTok, I'm asking you guys. I'm asking. I need to know. What is this new gimmick for Tony D'Angelo? Zach Pack says he's Bane. I don't know, man. I don't feel like he's the Mafia. But let's be real, the Mafia character doesn't work on the main roster. I know that. I told you guys that for a long time it wasn't going to work. I was very, very headstrong about that. So I knew he was going to have a gimmick change. I felt it. I knew it. You can't. The mobster gimmick, it's good, but it's too much like the old NXT days in which people had a gimmick, got over on the NXT. It doesn't get over on the main roster. So that is something to consider. Shout out to Tolino Channel for the super chat. We're just a couple super chats away from hitting our goal. Piccolo Pablo Pebble, he says, almost like a Tyler Breeze kind of gimmick, you're saying. Well, the thing about Tyler Breeze gimmick was it worked on the main roster to a certain extent, but it never led him to like actual main roster success. But yeah, I mean, that's the problem with some of those gimmicks. Like sometimes those over gimmicks in NXT don't translate to the main roster. So for example, Tyler Breeze was never a main roster success, but he was at least on TV and a comedy character. Tyler Breeze's character worked more for comedy. Tony D'Angelo's is a mobster. He's like Tony Soprano. It doesn't work that way. So that's why you see those characters and those changes, right? You see those changes because it doesn't work on the main roster. Tony D'Angelo's new character, I don't know what the hell it is. I don't know what his new character is. But I will watch Tuesday to find out. But does he have a new name? Because Tony D'Angelo reminds me a little too much of the mobster. So like those are things that we have to figure out. Mike in the chat also made a good point. He's like, Adam Rose was a flop. Leo Kruger would have been better. 100%. What got over was Adam Rose. But it should have been Leo Kruger. Leo Kruger was a perfect example. You guys see Roman Reigns? Leo Kruger would have been probably as big as that. So that is the way to look at it. It's all about perspective. But yeah, I don't think as if maybe that character. I don't think that character works in the main roster. And that's why they had to change Stacks. And by the way, Stacks, his name is dumb. Give him a new name. But you can't, man. You can't. You can't do those over-the-top gimmicks that work in NXT and then they don't work on the main roster. I'm sorry, they just don't. The Ascension was another one. Killed it in NXT, main roster, they didn't. Yeah. There's a lot of examples of this. There is a lot of examples of this. A lot. Bearcat Keith Lee. Well, that was just a shitty ass gimmick, Brian. That was shitty. Bearcat Keith Lee was a bad gimmick, but also bad booking too. That's one thing that doesn't get talked about. So keep that in mind. Sometimes the gimmick could be terrible. Honestly. Sometimes it could be terrible gimmick. But the booking could be fine. When you have a bad gimmick and bad booking, then that's different. That's different for sure. We got another super chat from Tolino Channel. He's getting us one step closer to our super chat goal. He dropped 200 Indian rupees and he says, when Righteous showed up at Final Resolution, people chanted, "Who are you?" I think it will help them to pick up steam and finally dominate the TNA tag division and finally get their stock up. Yeah. To answer this question, I'm going to just call it like it is. The Righteous are a great tag team. They were a tag team that we've seen historically in Ring of Honor. Then we saw them in AEW. I personally speaking, I think the Righteous going to TNA is a good move. I look forward to seeing what they do with the Hardys. And it was a nice surprise. I give a lot of props to TNA. They need to make signings. They need to make moves. Bear Bronson from AEW showed up as well. The thing about the Righteous was it's very well documented. They were going to be at one point in time with WWE and it just didn't work out. It didn't happen. We know there was talks. That obviously changes things and ruin things to a certain extent, but they're in TNA, man, and I think they're finally going to get their stock up, and I think TNA is the perfect showcase for them. Maybe I'm tripping, so if somebody wants to fact check me, feel free to do so. Feel free. But I almost feel like I remember the Righteous beating the Hardys on AEW television. Whether that was Rampage or Dynamite, I can't remember. But I do feel as if I remember them on that show. So, definitely intrigued by it, man. Shout out to Tolino Channel. I appreciate it. Some people in the chat are talking about the Righteous. Oh, those guys are cheap to sign for TNA. I mean, that would be a good thing, right? Isn't that a good thing? Isn't it a good thing that they don't cost a shit ton of money and they're quality talent? I would look at that as a plus. I mean, if you have $1 billion, you could spend $1 billion in one day, but that makes you a loser. That doesn't make you very smart. Shout out to Surge. He says, Killer Cross and the Righteous. Hey, man, we've heard about this. We've seen the tease before. You know, that's an interesting point. What if it were to happen? I would be down for it. We know it's been talked about. We know they've teased it. We know they have a relationship. Bring Killer Cross to TNA. Dude, this is the AMC era. What are we doing? You got to have some quality names. Mike Santana is a G. He's going to be a great champion. Bring in Killer Cross. Bring in Scarlett. Have him align with the Righteous. Have him a group. Let's go. Let's build this up, dude. I think this is huge. On AMC, by the way. AMC, I think they're going to let them get away with some stuff from a storytelling. They could do some crazy shit. Go crazy. If I'm Carlos Silva, I would have Killer Cross on the phone, bro. Have him show up. Have him show up that day. All I'm saying, you want to make a big splash, Killer Cross should debut on that show. Am I right or wrong? Do you guys agree? I want to know what you guys think. Do you guys think that should happen? Killer Cross should debut on TNA when they go live on AMC. There's no doubt about it. And he should align with the Righteous. They've done the social media stuff. They've done the teases. TNA needs a couple key signings to help them usher in this new era. Killer Cross could go to AEW and just be another person. He could go back to WWE and just be another person. Or he can go to TNA and become the person. And if I'm TNA, I start building my show around Mike Santana, Killer Cross, The Righteous. I think obviously you have to look at these different people in the company and say, yeah, you know what? It makes sense. Let's have some new pushes. Let's do some of this new stuff. And on top of that, like Jake something, right? Steve Macklin. There's guys on this company's roster that could be pushed. Leon Slater, AJ Francis. You can do something really enticing on weekly television with this. Killer Cross should be in TNA. It would be absolutely foolish if TNA did not make that happen. The Righteous should face off against the Hardys for the Tag Team Championship belts on that live episode on AMC, and Killer Cross should help them win. And that could be a very big storyline going into 2026. To me, that is a no-brainer. And for TNA, the fact is you need a little bit of signings. You need a couple more signings to make this work. And by having a couple more signings, you can now build up this roster appropriately. It's just a no-brainer, dude. Seriously, it really just, it's a no-brainer. No way, there's no other way for me to look at it. Zach Velocity says Cross and TNA always worked. They did. That is very true. What about the guys from Fourth Rope? I mean, the fact is Zilla Fatu, why not? I'm down with it, Serge. The guys from Fourth Rope, I think, dude, easy. You know, AJ Francis, there's a lot of guys, man. Build it around. I don't know. Zach Velocity says, I would like to see Danhausen join TNA. Would be smart. That's how you get people talking on social media. It would be absolutely smart. I'm down for it, bro. I'm down. I really am down for it. I have no problem with it. Danhausen could work pretty much everywhere. I mean, Danhausen in WWE also makes a lot of sense. He really does. He fits WWE's marketing and merchandising business plans and fanatics and definitely a lot of interesting stuff there, man. But if I were TNA, they need new signings. They need to do something. So that's the way to look at it. If we have any more super chats or any more gifts, any more questions, let's get them in now. Because today's stream is going to be cut just a little bit short. Just because I got to do some wedding planning stuff. So, would you like to see Lance Anoa'i in TNA? I'm not against it. I know him and Zilla Fatu, I think they're tag teaming. They got a tag team match coming up in House of Glory, if I remember correctly. So that's always a possibility. Listen, man, I think everybody should be given a shot. Everybody could be given a shot. You just got to do it the correct way. The problem is people come in solo and maybe they're not really a solo guy. You know, sometimes you got to be a tag team guy to make it. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but it's true. All right, guys, we're going to call it a stream. I appreciate you all. Peace.